great games at your table. I'm Jonathan Albin, and this is NycosRPG, and this is a very special edition of our episodes because I'm doing this on Christmas Eve. Now, I know that's pretty unexpected, and I don't anticipate that I'll have a huge number of viewers immediately about this, but this is going to be an episode to remember because you will be able to play NycosRPG immediately upon completing this episode. We're not going to take a lot of time, and I'm going to push right through it. This is actually part one of two parts, and the second part would actually be the mechanics of play, but I want to go through the process of how to build your persona on one of our character sheets, our persona profiles, and that is available for you to download at NycosRPG.com right now at the ready to play page. So go ahead and grab yourself one of those. You're going to need it. I can wait till you come back, or you can pause this episode, go get your materials, and then restart. But this will be the point when we will be actually starting the process as I switch to the next page. So Nykos is made up of basically several elemental pieces to get started with. What you have to memorize or learn is what I kind of call an acronym. I'm going to change it in a minute, but I just realized it's a really good one in here. If you are a person who is fascinated with, let's say, adult beverages, it's brews, base, race, estates, ways, and stuff. Place and estates hold equal value, but if you remember the two of them as estates, then it'll make it easier for you to remember the acronym brews, base, race, estates, ways, and stuff. We'll cover that in particular detail as we go through, but I just wanted to draw attention to that. Alrighty, so now if you've pulled up the profile page, you'll see that it's a multi-page document. Really, all we're going to focus on in order to create your persona is page one. And it's not creation per se. We'll go into what that actually means in terms of play, but you'll be able to get that information as we go forward. It's PDF, so there's a fillable version if you want to just do the page one, or you can also just download it and print it out and use it that way. I prefer paper myself, but that's everyone's preference, I suppose, up to themselves. So the first thing we're going to look at is the persona sheet itself. Let me go ahead and block these out for a second. So if you'll notice that the page is brightly colored, and you can of course print it out black and white, which will of course just make the areas that are shaded gray. But the persona is broken down into four pieces, which fits the description we're talking about so far: the base, race, the place, and estates. Now, they're all four here, but you can also remember the ways as well. We'll get to that in a minute. So in the base, we're actually going to be looking at, in particular, just 1/4 of the page. And that is this upper corner here. If you'll notice that there is the term base, and then there are shall I say 7 values, and I'll explain how those work momentarily. But we're going to be only working with this 1/4 of the page to start with. Now in this section, there are 6 categories: brilliance, cognizance, grace, presence, resilience, and resolve. So when we are talking about the framework of the game, the persona values are considered to be the framework, and these numeric values are fundamentally the skeleton of your persona. From this point on, after you've created these number values, you're going to be able to refer to them always, and they are unchanging. They are the basis for the persona, and over time they won't change. They actually act as the skeleton. Now, granted, it is a fantasy setting, and at least in the dark shards, you could use, for example, extreme magics to change that attribute. But generally speaking, these numeric values don't change. So just get used to realizing they are the basis for all of the skills that you will be building out going forward. So let's go over each one of them really quickly. Brilliance is your intellect, your cleverness, your wisdom, your ability to learn mechanically. It's the physical capabilities of your brain, so to speak. Beyond that, you have cognizance, and cognizance is the intuitive nature of the being, the attentiveness, you might say, the awareness. And because a person's intellect is broken down into both those things that they can comprehend and those things that they just can intuit, is why we're showing both sides of these with brilliance and cognizance as almost like a counterbalance. Now they're not even associated numerically, but they are associated in terms of determining which one you'll use within a situation during the game. Next is grace, and grace is a combination between your agility, your dexterity, your physical balance. It goes into a lot of characteristics that associate with not so much strength, but manual acuity, the idea of putting things specifically where you want. A good swordsman, for example, might have a very good grace, but so would a dancer or a locksmith or a regular smith for that matter. So the idea of grace is that it's capturing both your dexterity and a bit of your almost your appeal as well, because if you have a higher grace, you are perceptually more appealing, I suppose, and in certain cases you might be more klutzy or clumsy if you have a low grace, but that's a matter of how you play the persona. You'll find that since we're talking about theater of the mind, a lot of these relevances will be determined by that. Hey, thank you. I'm glad you're asking. Call me Annie. Nice to meet you. I hope I pronounced that right. And I do try to respond to the chat, so thanks for asking. This is in reference to a new role-playing system I've been working on for a couple of years. We've created tons and tons of videos about, called NycosRPG, and this is a one-to-one session where I'm trying to walk through the process. So I will be bringing up, for example, a slide in a minute that'll show you the page that we're working off of, but I'm kind of working through a script. So at this point, we're just talking about these attributes. So let me see, I'll just do it this way. All right, so this is what we're talking about, and I don't want to remain off the screen because I don't want to just be talking behind a profile. But the numeric values for these are determined in the development of the character at the very beginning: brilliance, cognizance, grace, presence, resilience, and resolve. And so we are walking through them. And thank you for asking, by the way, Annie. I just want to make sure that I'm progressing on the forward of this, because this will be useful for a lot of different people. So let me go back here for a second. So this is what the persona sheet looks like. I'll go ahead and show you the entire sheet. It is available to be picked up as a PDF at NycosRPG.com, which is my website, and you can pick it up on the Ready to Play page, where there's a download for either the Dark Shards one page, which is you can use it immediately by plugging in the data into the spaces, or you can download it and print it at a later point. So I'm sorry for confusing you with the information. I hope that was helpful. All right, so we are talking about these attributes that are in the base boxes, and I was just using those two blockouts to isolate to what we're talking about. So in this section of the character sheet, right here at the top corner. No worries. So Dark Shards as a system is percentage based, and I will be using a special ramp process, but we are talking about speed play, and I want to show you how quickly you can learn. So you can immediately start to build your persona, by taking numeric values between 20 and 45 in 5-point increments and placing them in any of these base boxes that you want. So 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 can be placed in any of those boxes except for the foundation box. If you're using the fast play, you can also go ahead and put in your foundation as 33 because that is what the average of all of these numbers that I've described would be. 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 average out to 33. So having done that, therefore you have the numeric values. By the way, I needed to, where's my bell? I buried my bell. Where is it? There it is. Thank you very much for joining us, Annie. I just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you so much for being a part of our show so far. All right, so now that we've got the persona sheet description and we've added in the base values, let me go back over them really quickly. Brilliance is your intellect, wisdom, your brain, your book smarts. Your cognizance is your awareness, alertness, observation. Your grace is your dexterity, agility, motility, and that kind of thing. Presence is something you won't find in a classic role-play game. Now, I've been GMing for 50 years. I learned from David Arneson when I was 11 years old, and I've never stopped. So the story changes, the games continue throughout my entire existence. So coming to the decision to actually publish Dark Shards was kind of a challenge because I've been, pretty much loyal to one brand. Now I've been a GM for virtually any game system that you can perceive of, and coming back to the Nycos mechanism, I decided to get rid of the difficult challenges and put back the fun that you would normally have in a role-play game. So presence, as I was saying, is the attribute of what kind of an impact you have in your community. Are you a wallflower who stands off to the side and doesn't get involved, or are you someone when you walk into the room they automatically turn and expect you to do something about it? This idea of presence, therefore, is basically how much of an ego does your persona develop in the game. And it's not necessarily something that's controllable. Some people just are more imposing. Some people have better, more chiseled appearance. Maybe they are, as Andre the Giant says, I can't help but if I'm the biggest in the room, I don't even exercise, because he's just bigger, and therefore he would have a bigger presence, if you will, in space. And it's not necessarily about size either. It could be attractiveness, it could be abrasiveness, whatever you want to determine that to be. But the presence numeric value scales up from basically 5% all the way up to 95%. And so therefore, if you are a person that has extremely high presence, then people can't hardly avoid seeing you in a room. It's just a matter, of course, of your being. Beyond that, we have resilience, and resilience is your hardiness, your toughness, your healthiness, your strength, your physical power, and therefore resilience would make a difference in terms of what you might choose as a career, but it's not necessarily something that's going to define who you are. You could be a very resilient plumber or florist, so it's not like it's a restriction or limitation. Next, we're going to be talking about the resolve. And resolve is something that is only indirectly approached by most role-play games. And the idea of the resolve is your ability to stand behind what you say or what you will do. And this doesn't necessarily mean it's well thought out. A good example is in the Brendan Fraser version of The Mummy. There's a persona, a character in there named Benny, who has no compunction about running away. He's always worrying about self-preservation. And so therefore, with a low resolve, he would just scoot away from a conflict. He wouldn't stand and face the music. Whereas a person with high resolve really can't afford to walk away because it is part of who they are to stand their ground. And so the base values for these are replicated by a rolling system, but for the speed play version, which we're working with right now, we're going to only put in numeric values between 20 and 45, scaling up. So 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 into those 6 spaces. When you've done so, no matter which order you put them in, your foundation value will be 33 because it is the average of your base values. So I realize that this is rather abstract to be speaking of, but if I were at the table with you, we would be looking at specifically what you want to put into for your brilliance, what about for your cognizance, etc., and filling those in. It's one thing to say just put the numbers in, but it's another to consider which one you want to put where. Now, I'll be honest with you. Role-playing games were never about optimizing the persona to be what you wanted to be from the beginning. You actually would roll the dice, play them as they rolled, and then build a character to match that numerical value. Later on, by the time you get to 3rd edition 3.5, it completely flip-flopped where the game master wasn't playing the role of a director at a stage where the players were actually walking in and playing the character that they had stepped into. Instead, the players were choosing their own path, and so it became sort of a wish fulfillment process. So there is a nuanced difference between the character that is going to be rolled randomly and those that are chosen. If you've never played a role-play game at all, just pick any order you want to put the numbers in these 6 spaces, 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40 and 45, and then we can go from there. We're not going to be pursuing a lot more information about that, but we'll talk a little bit more about those values as we go along. Okay, so we've talked about each of these, and it really is a matter of what you are wanting to choose, because in a NycosRPG game, there is no requisites and no limitations for any persona background you want to take. So if you want to be particularly smart, put a high brilliance. If you want to be particularly imposing, put in a moderate value for presence. If you want to be deft and graceful, then put in a higher value for that. But you only have these 6 values, so between 20 and 45, pick which one you want to be in which place. All right, so now we've established the numbers wherever they placed. Now, I'll also be perfectly candid that the persona development itself is generally using a ramp process. We'll go do a separate video on that process so that you can build your character within the rules framework. But in this case, we're talking about wanting to get started right away, and so we're wanting everybody to have a persona. And once you've placed these numbers in, you've got your basis for your persona going forward. So the next thing we have to look to is race. Now, before we get that, I do want to specify that because these attributes are your skeleton, they will not change over the duration of time that you play the persona, barring some ridiculously powerful magical choice that your game master makes. But generally speaking, your attributes stay static, and all of your skills, therefore, are associated with one or more of these. And generally, when there are choices in terms of which of the foundation values you want to use, then you get to pick that. It's not something that the storyteller mandates. And this numeric value then will change, and that's when we talk about advancement a little bit, it'll make more sense. Right now, I'm just running. It's like just like any role-playing game. You got to get started by starting. Once you've started the process, then it's easier to understand. So the next thing we have to look at beyond building your attributes, we're going to be talking about race. And in this case, very clearly, race means speciation. I prefer the term race because it's understandable. We all understand that there are differentiations between human beings that are don't define us as a separate species, and so therefore those don't even apply. We're only talking about the specifics of external being types that are in the same world. We don't have the luxury of this on Earth. We have one species, but in other cultures, in the case of a high fantasy world, you would have, for example, perhaps some elven type species, perhaps some dwarven type species, some tall folk, some short folk, some people that live in the ground, etc., etc. And so by having a whole variety of different species or races, you end up with a lot of different types of people, types of concepts that you can play. And so therefore you're choosing your species. And let's show you where that would be in this case. Let's see here. In this case, it's this upper quarter. So just as the base was done before, we're now moving on to the second section, which is called race. Now, in the case of race, you're going to be merely recording the choices of traits that you want your persona to have going into the game. These are generally limited to 6 out of a potential 7 or 8. And the reason for there being slight variance is that they are fundamentally the notable characteristics that the persona that you're playing exhibits physically. And therefore, these are sort of like your quick description of what you are like so that other players can acclimate themselves to who you are right from the very beginning. So, let's give this definition. These races are considered to be defined by their marks. And the marks are those defining characteristics of each species in terms of physical traits and abilities. Well, excellent. You can actually start playing right now. We can actually build you the persona as we go through this. If you go to NycosRPG.com and download the page, you can actually follow along with the description. And by the time we're done, we'll have your first character, your first persona ready to play. So the defining characteristics of your species will be determined by the storyteller or game master. And the mechanism of NycosRPG, if you've not looked at any of my videos or whatever, you'll notice that I don't have a lot of pictures of the different variations of species or creatures or anything, mainly because we play primarily in the theater of the mind. Now, this is a benefit, especially when you're playing online, because you don't have the burden of miniatures or having to go through the unending process of looking through books to find stuff out. So these race values are going to be defined within the rule system. As a matter of fact, if you are at the NycosRPG.com website, you can also download the Fast Play Master Book series. There's actually, I think it's 11 or 12 page PDF that has all of the outlines of how to play and includes some of the species of the world of Nykos, so that you can start immediately building out which of those traits you would want to have for your very first persona. So, having said that, now we're going to go on to the next part of this, and that is, okay. So, in the framework, in the basis of play, we've already talked about the idea of the base values being your attributes and how to mechanically build a character. And those number values become your anchor or your framework. And so when you build your marks, for example, and your skills, as when we get to that part, you're going to be taking a numeric value from your framework, from your base values, and associating it with that particular skill or mark as described in the instructions. So, for example, in the case if you're playing an Eldrin and you've got a particular ability to have acuity in terms of hearing, then you would take that as a cognizance numeric value more than likely, and therefore that would then become the ability number, and over time those will advance. And that's really the magic here, is that your persona's advancement is focused directly on what you as a player have chosen to do. It's not something that the game master has to give you permission for. You don't have to wait around for an experience point bump. You simply gain skill and gain mark value by utilizing those in game. And that is usually defined as when a game master has allowed for or requested a die roll against that mechanism. So again, using the Eldrin hearing, with the taller ears, perhaps they've got better hearing, they would roll against their skill, and whether they succeed or fail, they will get to advance that skill one time per session. I know I'm getting ahead of myself and I don't want to race ahead, but I just want to give some examples. Now, the basis for the races literally are whatever framework or world your storyteller is creating the story in. So, for example, if he's using downshift, he's operating in a post-apocalyptic world, and therefore the limits on how many species are available might be different. He may have certain restrictions on which species might be available, and therefore it's up to the storyteller, game master, to give you the framework for which race options you have. But once you've chosen the race, then it's up to you to follow your own advancement within that species. So now I'm not operating with the book in front of me. As you can see, I'm sitting at my desk here, and so the idea of which traits you want to take, just realize you can take up to 6 different traits, and generally the lists for each are about 7 or 8. I usually give 1 or 2 more than you can possibly actually take, and that's only so that there'll be slight differentiation even if multiple people choose to play the same species. So remember that the race is considered to be the list of marks that are your defining characteristics for each species in terms of their physical traits or abilities. So all of these are advanceable. What that means is that you can move forward in the use of your marks because they are a skill. Yay! Glad to have you with us, Annie. And you can also check out more information from this. I've got tons and tons of videos, so when you get done with this one, you'll definitely watch others because there's a lot of information. And if you want to become a part of our community and be able to actually use your persona in a game we play on the weekends, our Patreon supporters actually have 2 private games, and so you'd be able to become a part of that and play with us either on Friday nights or Sundays. But now I'm jumping way ahead of myself, so let's get back to this. So once you've established, and let's go back to the persona sheet for a second. Okay, so the next we're going to be talking about is the bottom half of the sheet, which is listed as places and as states. And I'll go into each one of them particularly, but just realize that they are collectively that which defines your background and your motive. And we'll cover them independently. But the next, so we go back to our original statement. Let's go back there for a second. Here. So looking at our creation process, we'll deal with the base, then the race, then the estates, which is placing estates together, and then the ways. So we're at the places and estates. And I list them separately here, but I just now realized that it's a really cool acronym to have it be base, race, estates, ways, and stuff. So I may merge those terms together in the long term. Since we're still in development, this is not, although it has been published in terms of the books, the first two anyway, we may revise this, but the idea is that to make it easy to learn, and so brews, BREWS, is the way you can remember how to build a character. Base, race, estates, ways, and stuff. So right now we are looking at the ways. I'm sorry, the estates. So let me get back here. All right. So when we talk about the estates, or that which makes up who you are, the foundational descriptions, we're actually looking at two areas. The first one I've established as the place, and that's your cultural origin. That's the place you come from. That doesn't necessarily mean a specific location, but it could. But it also could mean a culture. So maybe your family was very heavy on these subjects, or perhaps your family was part of a community who were nationalists or whatever. The idea here of your cultural origin gives you some very solid means of determining what your heritage is, what were your formative surroundings, what they would be that you could connect with. And in the fast play version, you're only given a quick outline of them and only a very little bit of information about them. In the PDF, which you can download from that site as well, which is the actual rule book, the master book PDF is available there. I believe that it's you can purchase it at $10 as a PDF from that website if you go to the shopping part. But I'm not really focused on that. But the idea is that once you have the master book, then you have an extended list of skills that you could pick up from your background. This is the idea that if you are raised, let's say, in a community that honors the elders, honors the ancestry and the family from which you came, perhaps you have some skill in genealogy. Perhaps you have some awareness of who might be related to whom. Maybe you can pick up some information about what is valued from community to community. These are all skills that come from your place. They come from the core of your belonging. And say, where did you come from? This is, in terms of game, it's very small. It's only a couple of skills, but it's very important to build a formative nature of the background of that character so that it's something you can grasp and belong to and be part of. Now, this is a departure from classic roleplay games, which is generate a character, throw it into combat, and if it dies, so what? We just build a new one. Instead, this is the idea of we're wanting to establish who you are within the framework of the world of Nykos and how you connect with the beings that are there. So the idea of understanding your culture is pretty critically important. In addition to that, we have the estates, and the estates are your personal motive. You know, if you've decided that your persona is starting out on his life and he's walking away from his family, why is he doing that? Is there some reason? Maybe he's wanting to prove himself. Maybe there's a reason why she is moving out into the community and wants her independence. These all are critical to the development of the persona, but they are not necessarily limited to only some dried set of historical possibilities. So this is about your intention and focus. It's why you're doing what you're doing, and therefore a number of estates a number of skills that the estates can provide you is considerably larger. In the master book, it's basically the number of skills that you can start with from your estates is equal to the core value of your foundation base. And so if you've looked at the persona, and for those of you that are new, welcome to the show. I see there are up to 5 of us now. Yay! Welcome. Thank you for being here. And you're more than welcome to join with me. I don't care how long this takes. I anticipate that we'll have the persona ready for you to play within 20 minutes or so. But of course, using time to re-describe things tends to take me way past my times. I see that I'm at a half an hour already. So, woo! All right. So, let me do a quick refresher for those that just jumped in. You may not have seen this. So, we are starting with the game of NycosRPG. Going all the way back here for a quick second. There are 6 steps. We're going to go through the 6 steps. We are working our way through the base, race, place, estates, ways, and stuff. And I just recently made a notification that place and estates are really going to be kind of under the same acronym, so use them as estates. So that makes it brews. Base, race, estates, ways, and stuff. Brews. We can all remember brews. You might want to go on after we get done with this. No, I'm kidding. So we have talked about the base. The base on the persona sheet is this upper quadrant here. We've talked about the race, and the race marks are the speciation traits of each of the being types that's available on the world of Nykos. Even if you're playing a human being, there are actually a whole group of skills that you can pick up. They're called marks because they are traits of the human nature and of the other species natures. So, for example, if you are playing a cat hybrid, known in Nykos Dark Shards as the feline, you might have a tail. You might have with fuzzy whiskers. Maybe you have pointed ears. And each of those traits will give you certain skill benefits that advance throughout the game. And so you can become a better name of species here by having this list of traits. And they are determined by the species that you choose. And in the if you go to NycosRPG.com, you can actually download the master book fast play version, and I think it has like 6 species, so you can get an understanding of how race works. The next section we talked about is the estates or the place, and this is talking about your background, and these give you a modicum number of skills. These are generally the places that you grew up with are going to give you trends. For example, if you grew up around money, you're going to have the ability to assess value pretty quickly as a skill, and so therefore you can take appraisal as a skill from your place. Now these are in addition to the base skills that you're going to be able to choose from, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. We're going to have to talk about that a little bit later in the video, but the next thing we need to talk about is the personal motivation, the estates, and these are the things that drive your persona forward. And you get a number of skills from your estates equal to the core of your foundation value, which will be 7 in this case. Numbers are 1/5 the normal. Okay, now we can finally get to the fun part of the game. That is the ways. And the ways are literally the skills. And if you've played role-play games before, you almost always know that you've got a class that comes in there someplace and tells you what you can and cannot learn. And in NycosRPG, there are no such limitations. You can literally take skills from anywhere. So any of the ways can be your course towards the future. You can choose to follow the ways of deeds, or the ways of intrigues, or the ways of wonders, and each of them has an immense list of skills. As a matter of fact, the majority of the pages in the Nykos Dark Shards book is made up of the different types of skills you might take from the various ways. But in addition to that, you have along with each of these 6 separate courses that you might take. And this was sort of to emulate, for those that are not those that are familiar with role-play games and can't get their head around the idea of liberty or freedom. This was to make it so that, okay, way of deeds would be analogous to a fighter course. So if you wanted to become a warrior, this is the course that you'd want to look at for skills that'll be familiar to you. If you are looking for either a magi or a cleric or a priest or whatever, you're going to want to look in the ways of wonders. You may also want to pick some skills from, say, for example, the way of intrigues, which is not just the pathway of, it's not specifically designed to be the pathway of rogues, but it could be scalawags, it could be all kinds of choices that led you into the ways of intrigues. But as Sting from Police would say, poets, priests, and politicians have words to thank for their positions. And so the way of words might be a choice for you in determining the persona you're wanting to build. Each of the ways has more than enough pathways to skills that you don't have to necessarily branch out and take from other ways. Just realize there is no limitation, because the concept of character development has more to do with what the players want their personas to do than what the game master has framed out that they must be able to do, if that makes any sense. So now that you've built out and you started working on this, the number of skills that you can add is going to boggle your mind. You take your foundation value, which we determined to be 33, and you get 33 skills from anywhere. And that's a lot. Now, I'm not recommending that you go through and start filling all of those out, because that would take you a long time and you would get lost on what you were trying to accomplish. And it just makes better sense for you to discover what you want to do as you move through the game. So surprisingly, if you've just gotten the things that we talked about, the base, the race, your estates, and started working on your skills, we have enough. You can actually start playing immediately. Now, I don't know where you are in your development, I don't know if you've gotten to that point yet, but if you have filled out the base and you give them the numbers between 20 and 25, 40, between 20 and 45, then we can go back and start filling in the rest of the sheet. We really don't need any of it. We can start playing right now. But in the case of completeness, realize that you've put in the base values, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45 from the fast play. And now you're going to create the core values for those. And the core values are 1/5. So rather than making for a lot of math, it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In the same order, 20 down to 45 gives you between 4 and 9. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And once you've got those numbers on the persona, you're ready to play. Now, I did this in about 43 minutes, and that's with me flubbing up and having to repeat myself and whatever. So this is not a fair representative of how to play, but I've given you the basics, and I'm going to give you an example to consider if you want to play that persona. And that is in the comment section. Give me a description of what persona you've built. If you've got an idea for a name, definitely throw that in there. If you don't have yet an idea of a name, but you just want to know more, by sending me a comment, I'll go ahead and give you a feedback on what that persona might be like in the game, and also give you a recommendation for which game you want to join. You may want to join. Now, I do have currently already 2 games operating on YouTube. Now, that's strange because it's disconnected. It's not as effective and not as internally enjoyable as role play in depth. And basically, it's a way for me to kind of show you how you can be a part of this and how we can play together. But once you build out your persona, then you can either join. I have a campaign called Dreadnought Squadron, which was based on Roleplay Roulette, our very first session online. And you can actually become a part of that story by going to my Roleplay Roulette channel and watching that video or videos and getting an idea of what's going on in that story, and comment in there which character you're going to play and your list of base values, and we can start playing immediately when you do so, because I feed back on every action that's put into one of the games that's going. Second game that is out there is Desolate Shoals, which is a pirates themed story. And again, I've done an initial episode, so you can, if you want to join Desolate Shoals, you can do that. Or on Saturdays, I do a role-play roulette session at the local game store. And in this case, the third one that we did was Division 7. And Division 7 is kind of the Nycos response to the concept of Men in Black, the idea of mysteries and aliens and weird, all kinds of weird science kind of episode stuff. And so we're actually working on that as well. So that's at least 3 of them that we're working on. So if you have not played a role-play game before, that's a quick way to get a feel for what kind of things might happen in those games. If you are a role player and are already interested in the NycosRPG mechanism, you can join our Patreon program at patreon.com/Nykos. And there, once you become a member and a supporter, we then provide you with access to our Discord channel. One of the major benefits is that participation at any level beyond the free membership garners you access to our online games, and we play on Friday nights and on Sunday afternoons. So if you're interested in becoming a player or participant, we'd be glad to have you in either one of those games. I also play live at a board game store in Southern California, so if you happen to be in the Redlands area, or what they call the Inland Empire of Southern California, you can join us at Board Game Paradise in Redlands, California, Mondays and Tuesdays, and we play 4 hours per session. There is a fee at the door for that, but okay, so here we go. So let me help you with creating the character. So the base values 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45. You've already established those, right, Annie? If you've done that part, then you take, to come up with the core values, since you're already on that page, the core values are 1/5. So that works out to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you place those in the core boxes associated with the percentages. So 20% would be 4, 25 would be 5, and so on. So you fill in the core values. Now those aren't used often. Those are only used when your character is doing something while it's in a stressed condition, but you want to have them on the persona sheet. And that's the reason why I don't focus on them. You don't have to have them to play, but you'll eventually get them all filled out. But if you've got that part done, the next thing would be the race. And if you are playing NycosRPG but you haven't yet, I would recommend you go to the website www.NycosRPG.com. You'll see my shining face sitting with my book open, and you'll know who it is. But once you're on the page, you can click the Play Now button, and when you do, it'll open up a bunch of options for you to download. Included would be, for example, the persona sheet, which you already have, so that's good, and then also the master master book fast play version. And if you download the master play fast play book, that gives you 11 pages. It gives you the PDF of the types of species that are involved in the Nycos, so that you can build out the race portion of your persona. So did you find that? That'd be my next question, Annie. If you've gotten to the website and to the master book, that'll make it tons easier to do. Once you have that, then we can worry about the other portions. But the character building is actually the simplest part of this. And generally, in a tabletop situation, when I'm able to actually show you the physical elements, it takes roughly 5 minutes to get ready. But let's assume at this point you've got the numbers as the base values and didn't find the races. So did you download the PDF of the master book? I didn't actually put anything on the website about the species, and I'll be honest with you. Okay. So if you found the PDF, then when you downloaded the PDF of the pages, it should have been a 10 or 11 page document. I go ahead and put up an example of it here if I can get back to that page. Go back here. Oh no. I did not go right. Okay, good. Okay, so if you found the species,